OldGuyTalks.com is all about being a better man. Join me on this kick-ass journey. Exclusive stuff for members only in the Old Guy Cave. Opt in now. This is Urs, the old guy from www.oldguytalks.com here in Phoenix, Arizona with Tom Jenney from Americans for Prosperity. He's in charge of their legislative program here in Arizona. He has been around the block, folks, around the block a few times. He's worked at the Cato Institute and other famous, prestigious places in Washington, D.C. That's right. Where'd you go to school? You went to school. You were born in Tucson, and you
born in Tucson, and went to University High School in Tucson. Graduated, went to New Mexico Military Institute in Roswell, New Mexico.
Were you a bad boy? They sent you away to
no,
military school?
I sent myself to military.
Oh, okay. All right.
I sent myself to military school.
There's usually like a JV that goes to military school, isn't that that group of kids?
Yeah, no, that's right. Yeah, the nudge from the judge. Yes. No, I chose to go to military school. I sent myself to military school. And then I went to Georgetown University in Washington to finish up.
Okay, gosh. Well, it's amazing that since you went to Georgetown, it's amazing that you actually ended up at Americans for Prosperity.
It is. It is. It is not. I'm not doing exactly what the Jesuits had in mind, or most of them had in mind, by social justice.
Yeah, right.
Now, I think of myself as a social justice warrior, but not in the same sense that most of these guys think of. I am for social justice,
well,
but
who isn't?
That's right. That's right. But I just have a different definition of
what it is. All right.
My definition has a lot more to do with justice. I found one of the. I'm not the first person to mention this. I'm not the 1,000th person to mention this. But when you put the word social in front of anything, you tend to get the opposite of what you're actually intending.
Mm-hmm.
So when you talk about social security, I mean, there is retirement security. And then there's social security, where you hope that the government sends you a check.
Yeah.
And then there's justice, which means people doing right by each other. And then there's social justice, which involves a lot of stealing.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about Americans for Prosperity. What is the purpose of that, the mission of that organization? Who founded it and why?
Americans for Prosperity exists to recruit, educate, and mobilize citizens in the defense of the free society.
Mm-hmm.
So it's grassroots organization in the trying to achieve free market ideals and free market policy outcomes. We were founded a long, long time ago. Before we were Americans for Prosperity, we were founded in around 1990, I think a little earlier, as an organization called the Citizens for a Sound Economy.
Mm-hmm.
And Citizens for a Sound Economy was founded by Charles Koch and David Koch, who are the famous Koch brothers. And
sure.
I usually have to do this.
Yes, we were going to get to that. Yes.
So founded by the Koch brothers, and I love the Koch brothers. I have a big problem with them. My biggest problem with the Koch brothers is I'm always trying to figure out, should I have David's face tattooed on my left arm and Charles on my right, or should I have Charles on my left and David on my right? And I just, it's a very difficult problem.
So it's true,
it's kept me from getting ink.
It's true, they are a cult.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm a huge fan. They're great people trying to save this country. It's one of the great things about America is that there are actually people here with means who are still trying to save this country.
Mm-hmm.
If you go to Argentina, if you go to France, pretty much everyone who's wealthy has left.
Sure.
Or is trying to get their assets offshore as quickly as possible,
mm-hmm.
and get out of the country. And very few of them are actually doing anything to try to save the country. But Charles and David are doing their best to try to save this country and try to put this country on more of a free market track. And the reason we believe in doing that is because we believe that free market economics and free market policies are the way to achieve the highest well-being for citizens, and including the least fortunate.
Sure.
So that's how part of how I told you I'm a social justice warrior.
Sure.
And really for me, if the economic system doesn't work for the poorest people in our society, then I've got a problem. We need to do something. And currently our economic system in America is not doing the best by the poorest people. But that is not the fault of free market economics or free market policies. It's due to the lack thereof.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we're fighting for. Anyway, it was Citizens for a Sound Economy up until about 2004 when we decided to reboot the thing. And previous to that, Citizens for a Sound Economy had been more of a grass tops organization where people, when there was a big issue like the BTU tax in the early 90s, people would parachute in from Washington into various states and try to figure out, okay, who's the local Republican district chair? Who's doing this? Who are the legislators? What are the local conservative clubs? How do we organize? And what we decided to do starting in 2004 was to have a truly state-based, state chapter-driven organization where it's not people parachuting in from Washington. So we had real people on the ground, and luckily about the fall of 2006, they decided I was a real person who could lead the effort. So I was the state director of Americans for Prosperity for 10 years, from 2007 all the way through part of 2017. And now I'm what's called the senior legislative advisor. So I'm a glorified lobbyist, but I still get to hang out in the grassroots, and that's my real love. I like getting out there and talking to real people. Not that legislators aren't real people, but well, they're real people that are in a very special situation. So I really enjoy getting out and talking to groups, civic groups, and driving around the state. And
sometimes you wonder if they are real people. Okay, we went back and kind of alluded to the reputation of the Koch brothers. What you're expounding is not so. It's actually a pretty reasonable ideal. So why are they so reviled in so many circles? Why do people kind of get after them? Why do you think that is?
I think it's because, unlike so many people, they put their money where their hearts are. And they're actually, like I said, in the fight, trying to save this country, trying to keep us from becoming a more of a socialist state. And they're trying hard. And they got involved in elections, which is, once you get involved in elections, you tend to piss people off. And to some extent, they've been very successful. I mean, I think in many ways you could say they've been very, very successful. You know, when Obama and his gang took over in 2008, we faced three big threats. One was Obamacare. Sure. We lost on that. There was cap and trade, the sort of carbon tax, the cap and trade system. We won on cap and trade. We also won on the big labor issue, which was card check. They were going to make it exceedingly easy for labor unions to organize, and stay certified and all that. And we beat them on that. So on the big three issues, we beat them on 2 out of 3.
Okay.
So and the left is not happy about that.
No, they would not be. So let's talk about this love-hate relationship between the Kochs and Trump. It's an interesting relationship. When you work, originally they weren't supporting them. They weren't supporting the president, and then they seem to have, sometimes they support, sometimes they don't. What's your take on that?
So I don't really know much about the inner workings of that relationship. I know David and Donald. I can just call them first names as if I know all these billionaires. I know that David and Donald go back a long way.
Oh, they do? Okay.
Socially and whatnot in New York, so I don't really know. I gather, I don't know exactly what's going on, but the Koch brothers decided that Donald Trump's overall message was not the one that they wanted. And so I don't think they could be qualified as never Trump, but they were very skeptical about the man.
Oh, yeah, I think on some of the stuff, I mean, they were reading about it. They were very helpful on getting the grassroots people out to vote for other candidates, which also benefited Trump in a lot of these elections. And after the election, there's been issues that they've been very much in tune, like the tax cuts.
Oh, absolutely.
And then there are other things that they've been
and regulatory.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing how much we've done on the regulatory front together. We've got kind of this wonderful revolving door between some of our think tanks that have been set up in our network and the Trump administration.
Well, let me read you a headline here. I think the way it's said, I think this headline, this is from Salon, which is a lovely magazine. It says, let's see here, the Koch brothers' most loyal servants are serving Donald Trump in Donald Trump's administration. I like the word servants.
Yeah, it's funny, this whole shoot the messenger thing. And every once in a while, I find myself doing it. Every once in a while, I'll talk about George Soros on the left and Tom Steyer. And Tom Steyer is a big deal. I don't know how many of your viewers are from Arizona, but
let's talk about it, because this stuff is coming to their house soon.
Okay, so I'm going to tell you that it's not a good thing to shoot the messenger, but then I'm actually going to do it. So, but in general, I think it's it's called ad hominem, where you attack the person rather than attack the actual argument. And that is something that the left does all the time, and to a large extent, our side does it too. There's a lot of people who they just hear that something is from George Soros and it must be bad. You hear something that's from Tom Steyer and it must be bad. And in this case, I'm about to talk about, it is bad.
Okay.
But really, generally speaking, everybody on all sides of an argument, if you're going to be intelligent, you ought to be arguing the facts of the case. You ought to be arguing the actual policy and not just reaching out to a boogeyman that is the boogeyman for your tribe. I think there's an extent to which our discourse in America has gotten really bad and very childish, frankly, and very tribal, very childish, and that's sad. We ought to be arguing ideas, not who's your boogeyman, or So anyway, that said, there are people like Tom Steyer who are trying to put. He's a left-leaning industrialist, investor, billionaire, who is currently trying to put something on the Arizona ballot for November that would force, if this proposition passes, if the people of Arizona are duped into this thing, it would force Arizona's energy consumption to come 50%, energy generation, to come 50% from so-called renewable sources, as left-wing environmentalists define renewable, which, by the way, does not include nuclear. And so
the most
right. So you've got some big problems. Of course, it doesn't involve coal. Everybody hates coal. But basically, to try to get renewables from 50% to be 50% of the portfolio is a gigantic undertaking. Now, maybe there's some chance that will happen in the marketplace, but what it almost certainly means is that it's going to be huge increases in our costs, huge increases in how much it costs for you to just keep the lights on, for you to keep your refrigerator on, and to keep your house at a comfortable temperature in the summer. This is a very big thing. He wants to force Arizonans to use a lot more solar. And it turns out, and this is where I'm going to go kind of shoot the messenger on this thing, it turns out the guy's got a ton of investments in solar. And to the extent that we're phasing out coal, he's got a ton of investments in natural gas. So he's taking it both ways on this thing. And so I'm going to shoot the messenger a little bit. Here's a guy who's already a billionaire. He's got tons of investments in solar, and he's trying to force people in Arizona to buy more solar.
Now he's doing some other things politically. If I'm thinking about the same person, isn't he the one also running something to try to impeach President Trump?
He is involved in that, and I'm not really clear on the details.
Yeah, I'm not either. I just know
his name has come up in that context.
In that context, and other things.
By the way, I'm pro impeachment in general. I think presidents should be impeached, like all of them.
No.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of presidential power. I think presidential power in this country has completely run amok, and I think that Congress has completely been derelict collectively in their duty for decades in terms of actually policing the presidential power.
That's the libertarian side creeping out right now.
Very, very much. Yeah. I think it's well, one of my favorite books is a book called The Cult of the Presidency, and it's all about how Americans have turned the presidency into this weird tribal religious thing, where you're electing the Pope every year or every 4 years. It's like you're choosing to elect the Pope, and this person has to be the embodiment of everything good and right and sound, and he's just a human being. We shouldn't do that. We should not put these people up on pedestals like that. I like the Swiss system. In the Swiss system, they rotate through 7 people on this board, and so no one in Switzerland can ever tell you who their president is, and nobody cares. I think that's a saner system than the one we have now.
I'm not sure I'd buy that. We'll let that go for another time.
That was not necessarily an AFP
position. That was Tom speaking on his own.
That was
again the libertarian creeping out.
Oh, it'll
creep out.
Yeah.
It won't creep out. It won't come out.
Yeah.
It'll just come out like a big bag.
It's just below the surface.
Yeah, okay. So what's this thing in Arizona? Let me go with some of this Arizona stuff. We do have a good number of people from Arizona. Cities must hold elections when people are more likely to vote. What a novel concept.
Yeah, that's a real head scratcher. Cities should hold their elections when people are actually likely to vote.
Yeah. So what's the genesis? I think I know, but tell me a little bit more.
The big question, I think, is why is it the other way?
Yeah.
And the short answer is concentrated benefits and diffused costs. It's basic public choice economics. The people who stand to gain a lot from city government spending and from taxes that drive city government spending, the people who stand to gain, the contractors and the labor unions and those folks, they would rather have the elections when nobody is actually showing up. They'd rather have their elections on big issues in August in Phoenix, when lots of people are out of town and when very, very few people show up at the polls, other than the people who are connected and know they have to show up at the polls in order to support the union agenda, in order to support the big spending boondoggles that are going to fund these contractors. And they really do not want to hold votes in November, and especially November of even-numbered years.
Yeah. So in Phoenix, we have a unique situation. I cannot recall, and I've lived in Phoenix since 1960, folks. Yes, I'm that old, and I wasn't born here. I can't recall the last Republican mayor of Phoenix. I know it's not supposed to be a partisan race, but I can't recall. I think was it Martin Hance? I mean, it's like ages ago.
She was the first female mayor.
I think she was also Republican.
Late 70s.
Yeah. I think it's been a long. And I think a lot of that has to do with the timing of the elections. And as you're right, they get the union vote out and everyone else.
It could be, and our job at AFP-Arizona is not to be partisan with the candidates,
sure,
not to get into partisan or electoral politics in that sense. But we've noticed that some of these big spending questions, the big tax and spending questions, that these things are all scheduled precisely when large numbers of people are not there voting. And that's our big problem. It may end up having some, the consolidation of elections to decent election days, to high turnout election days, may end up having some impact on the electoral scene. It could just be that there's Phoenix is majority Democrat now, and that's just the way it's going to be. I don't know.
I think a lot of these races are going to be a lot closer.
Could be.
And they may go other way. Let's talk about charter schools and private schools, things like that. There's some new laws that have been passed regarding charter schools here in Arizona. What's all that about?
So we passed 2 pieces of legislation this year to try to protect charter schools. Actually, to protect them when they're trying to expand or grow. We've got a couple of policies so far in cities we've had policies that are very discriminatory against charter schools and private schools. And one of those is that, one of them is just school districts themselves. And we've seen this in a few cases where school districts have a big empty building, they built too much capacity and kids have all gone somewhere else. So they've got a whole school that's sitting there empty or almost empty and in some cases literally empty. And they have put it out to bid, put the property out to bid, and the highest bidder was an independent school, was a charter school or a private school. And they stopped the bidding and didn't sell. So what we're seeing is that these districts, many of them, even though they have no use for that property, it's dragging them down. It's causing them to have excess capital and administrative burdens. They still want to hold on to this rather than allow a competing school to use that space. So we have corrected that this year with legislation that now says, hey, if the independent school is the top bidder, you have to sell. You can't just sit on it. The next thing we've done is there was another situation where literally, and this mostly came out of Tucson, where a liberal city council had a situation where a piece of land was zoned for schools, so that you could have a district school in there. But what they said was, oh no, yeah, we know it's zoned that you have a district school there, but you can't put a charter school there. You can't put a private school there. So we just fixed that as well to make sure that that city councils are not going to be allowed to discriminate against independent schools.
And the last thing I kind of note, requiring courts to actually make decisions. What's versus kicking the can down to administrative bodies?
So we have a big problem in this country with regulation and with the courts and how the courts have treated regulations. And what we've seen in this country, it's something called Chevron deference. It also comes from the old Lee Optical case. We've seen at the national level and in Arizona since the early 80s, we've seen a huge amount of deference to, this has been going on for several decades at the federal level, and it's been going on since at least the early 80s in Arizona, where clearly a regulatory regime hurts a business. There's no basis in, there's no sound basis based on health or safety for actually having that regulation. It's pretty clear that that regulatory regime is designed to help the incumbent businesses, the incumbent players in that industry, and hurt new entrants. It's designed to basically make it harder to get into the game. And so that ends up driving up the cost for consumers, and it ends up driving up profit margins for incumbent businesses, things like cosmetologists. There's no possible reason why we need to have people spending $1,500, 1,000 hours, even 1,000 hours, but even currently the law is more like 1,500 hours. To become a cosmetologist, you got to spend something like $18,000. When many of these skills are things that you could learn as an apprentice to somebody, you could learn very easily out in just working with somebody or for many fewer hours. The whole system is designed to keep people out of that business. It's designed to keep people from going into that business. So what we want to do is when you have situations like this, or when a regulatory body is clearly attacking some independent business because of no good reason, there's no health or safety rationale, we want the courts to be able to actually look at that and actually give that the respect that it needs to, and not just automatically defer to the regulatory agency. We want the courts to actually take another look, like they used to do. They used to do this several decades ago. And even in Arizona, they used to question regulatory regimes that had no rational basis whatsoever. And so we want the judges to get in there and start being judges when something is clearly wrong and there's no statutory basis for that regulation. There's no statutory basis and there's no health and safety basis. Judges ought to be asking questions. They ought to be striking some of this stuff down.
Tom, on a national and then from an Arizona standpoint, what would you say are things that you're looking to do? I know this legislative session is over, but what's on the horizon? So it kind of depends how well the elections go for certain parties. So we have things we'd like to do if you have a fairly conservative majority. And then we have things that we're going to work on if we don't have a conservative majority, and we end up playing defense in the Arizona legislature. And you were asking about Arizona legislature, or were you talking about Congress? Well, I was actually both. I want to talk a little bit about Arizona on a national level. What do you see as the things that Americans for Prosperity are interested in on a national level?
Okay, so at the national level, the biggest things are really, and to some extent, it's the same things at the state level, except for education. Education's not as big of a factor at the national level. It really should not be any factor at all. Constitutionally, it has nothing. We've done so well with the Department of Education. Yeah, the federal government should have nothing to do with education.
SAT scores are just through the roof.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. SAT scores are flat, and federal spending on education's gone up quite vertically. So, yeah, but normally the biggest issues for us are tax policy, budget policy, regulatory policy. That's the core of what we do. And on the tax front, we've had a fantastic time with Donald Trump's tax cuts. They've been outstanding. They've been great for me personally. I just calculated I'm just under $1,000 a year which is great.
Mm-hmm.
I'll take it.
Sure, sure.
So it's been fantastic, and we can look at all the companies out there that are giving out bonuses and giving out pay hikes, and this is just fantastic for the economy. So we're very happy about that. Where we're falling down is on the spending.
Mm-hmm.
Right now we're pushing for President Trump to use rescission
Mm-hmm.
to actually whittle down some of the big spending package.
Mm-hmm.
And he's got some latitude to do that. We believe he can cut about $40 billion out of that package fairly easily.
On the bill that was just passed?
Yeah. We believe that he has quite a bit of discretion in that thing.
Mm-hmm.
And we would really like for him to use it. So the spending is out of control in America, and that's true on both sides of the aisle.
Mm-hmm.
The Republicans and the Democrats are doing a terrible job in terms of watching the till. It's out of control. So that's huge. And then on the regulatory front, as we talked about earlier, we're very close to the regulators in the, not all the regulators, but the ones that have been appointed in the Trump administration. We're very excited about things that are happening there. We may have picked most of the low-hanging fruit, so I think we're going to have to get really smart about how we keep going to reduce regulations so that we're not hurting American businesses, so we're not hurting job creators.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of work to do in those areas. Would we like further tax cuts? Yes. We ought to do a lot more on the personal income side. We really hit the corporate income tax hard.
Sure.
I think we ought to take another look at the personal income tax side.
I'm all for that. I'm definitely all for that.
Yeah.
What do you see? The things that say, okay, we got to be worried about this possibly happening in the next 12 months or the next 24 months. What would you say those things are that would worry you that could be coming down the pike?
So one really interesting issue that's always has a potential to kind of blow up is DACA and immigration.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something we've kind of merged now with a partner group called Libre, which is the Libre Institute and the Libre Initiative, which works on getting Hispanics into free market causes. And so we're working with that organization. That's actually one of our brands, so it's really us. We're working hard with those guys to try to come up with a package where we can trade off, kind of like the president has suggested,
mm-hmm.
Where we trade off some sort of permanent legal status.
Mm-hmm.
Probably not citizenship, but we trade off some kind of permanent legal status for the people who are here, the so-called dreamers.
Mm-hmm.
We do something for those guys so that they're not just living in limbo,
mm-hmm.
frankly, through no fault of their own. At least most of them had almost no choice in coming here,
mm-hmm.
or staying here for that matter. So we want to fix the DACA problem. We'd like to solve that, but at the same time, I think most people out there want some kind of meaningful border security improvements, and there is money for the wall. It's coming, but I think conservatives want a lot more than that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I do believe that everyone wants a two-pronged approach. The big worry is that DACA gets done and the wall doesn't.
And then we're back to 1986.
That's right, Simpson, Missouri.
Yeah, I think that's a huge concern for conservatives out there.
Yeah, because they certainly got taken to the cleaners on that one.
So that's something that's always waiting to blow up. And it's really sad because, of course, the left doesn't really want to fix that problem.
It's too good of a political.
It's too good of a political issue.
Yeah.
And if you just make it go away and I've talked to, I was talking to my Uber driver, and he's legal the other day. I was going down to the Capitol.
Oh.
I couldn't park down there because there were so many people there for Red for Ed. But anyway, so I couldn't, I didn't even try to park. So I just took Uber down there. And my Uber driver, Hispanic guy, and from Mexico originally, but he's here legally. But he was talking about all of his friends who are not here legally, who are in the DACA. And he said, all we want is, we don't want to vote. We don't want citizenship. We just want legal status. Mm-hmm. And he even accused the Democrats of holding out on this issue because they want the votes,
mm-hmm.
and they want the issue.
Sure. Well, this may, given President Trump's way of being able to speak directly to an issue, this may blow up in their face.
Yeah.
Because he gave him a hell of an offer.
Yeah. And they rejected.
They rejected it.
Yeah.
And I was like,
yeah.
Really? All right.
Yeah, and I think even some real hardcore border security conservatives were feeling a little bit like, wow, maybe he's giving them too much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it was very generous. It was definitely very generous. All right, Tom. Now we get to the difficult part of the interview. The old guy is about virtues and vices, and I've known Tom for almost 20 years. Yeah, and Tom is full of virtues, but we need to find out if he's got some vices, folks. So that's why we didn't show you this page too. So if you're,
so let's run through the 7 deadly sins.
yeah, right.
Yeah,
If you were to compete, I'm not that good. I'm gonna have to put that into here. I'll have to add that question. Which of the 7 deadly sins is your favorite? No, that's not. If you're to compete in an Olympic event, summer or winter, what would it be?
We're not even talking about the vices. I didn't get to tell you I love cigars.
It's here.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, good. We'll get to that. And coffee.
Okay.
One of the horrible things is I have reflux, so I can't really have coffee all that often.
Okay.
But when I do, it's like training at altitude. When I do have coffee, it's amazing.
Wow.
It's actually a very powerful stimulant.
Yes.
You wouldn't know that from if you drink coffee every day. You have no idea that it's actually a powerful stimulant.
I have like 5 cups a day.
Yeah. So you've got no clue.
I have no clue.
If you go cold turkey for like 2 weeks, it'll be
okay.
Yeah.
So if you were an Olympic sport, what would it be?
That I could actually maybe do?
Well, even if you're just dreaming, your mind is making promises your body can't keep.
The luge looks really frightening and really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. That would be a thrill.
Yeah.
That would be a thrill. And the ski jump. That
would be a thrill.
It just looks totally frightening.
I like the kissing cousin of the luge, the skeleton where you're faced forward.
Yeah.
No,
actually, I didn't know the technical difference.
Oh, I
didn't know the
I think it's called a
difference.
skeleton. But that's only because I watched the Olympics a few months ago.
Either way, it's got to be pretty.
It's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
So what kind of music do you listen to?
I listen to all kinds of stuff. So, I mean, there's almost nothing I won't listen to, at least for a little while. I get tired of stuff pretty quickly, but in recent years, so I used to hang out in coffee shops a lot, and so despite being in my 40s, I tend to listen to a lot of music now. I sort of associate it with working hard. Is the sort of I think they call it indie pop music.
Okay.
So my favorite band in that genre is Two Door Cinema Club.
Okay.
But if you hang out too long in a coffee shop or a hip restaurant, you'll probably hear that stuff in the background. And it's funny just because most people don't adjust their tastes in music over time. And some of that stuff has deep roots into the 80s, even some of the stuff I liked in the 80s, the new wave stuff. So it's a distant cousin of that kind of music. So
have you done any downloads of Kanye West onto your playlist?
I have actually because of the latest thing. Because of the latest thing, I listened to the Reason podcast and they were gushing about what a great. One of their guys was comparing him to Bob Dylan. And I thought, oh, I better check him out. So far, he hasn't really grown on me yet.
I have no idea what he plays, what he sings. I'm sure that I've heard it, but I have no idea.
It seems like kind of classic hip hop. It's kind of classic hip hop rap, but maybe a little smarter. The lyrics are a little smarter.
Okay, well, that's good. That's good. Yeah. All right. If you're eating in the closet, something you don't want anyone to see you eating, what are you eating?
So I'm mostly on a low carb diet. Mm-hmm. So I do feel a little bit guilty if I eat a bagel or one of those baguettes that has chocolate in it or something really, really vicious.
Okay.
So I wouldn't say I'd have to go to the closet for it, but I do feel guilty about it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's definitely not on my list. Sugar's out.
Okay. Yeah. Smoke cigars.
Love it.
Yeah. What's your favorites?
If you're going to get me a cigar, which you should, it's the 1964 Padron.
Okay.
Maduro. That's my favorite.
All right. That's very specific.
Yeah.
That's very specific. A 1964.
Yeah. And Padron is just fantastic overall. They're Nicaraguan.
Mm-hmm.
They're really good cigars. Like very hearty.
Yeah, I'm a big Gurkha fan.
I've not had a beer.
Do you drink alcohol?
I don't.
What's wrong with you?
It's just not good. My parole officer has advised me against it. No, I just don't drink.
No.
I quit a long time ago.
Now, what if someone said, Tom does what? What would that what be?
I don't know. I think, trying to think. I go hiking. I go hiking quite a bit. I do, but if you follow me on Facebook, you can see that.
Mm-hmm.
So I go sporting clay shooting.
Mm-hmm.
I told you before the interview, I told you I just got into the sporting clays habit.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually a lifelong habit. I've been shooting since I was a kid with my dad. But an old guy showed up in my church, and he somehow got onto the topic, and he said, "Hey, why don't you come on out shooting with us?" So now I'm in a club, which is kind of cool because between my family and my work, I don't really do a lot. In fact, it's hard to say I have any hobbies at all, just because, I used to have tons of hobbies. There was a time I kind of retired for a couple of years in my mid-20s, and I had a lot of fun. I went backpacking in South America and did things like that. And I had lots of fun hobbies at the time. I got a pilot's license and rode a motorcycle, and almost all that stuff's gone away now, with kids and work. So it's kind of cool that I've rediscovered a habit or a fun hobby. So I'd say sporting clays would be that. But I don't think if anybody followed me on Facebook, I don't think they'd be surprised about that. Yeah.
All right.
I'll have to think of something.
Make it up.
Yeah. I have to think of something. I play Legos. And not just for my kids. I play Legos for myself. Yeah. I build things out of Legos.
Okay.
Yeah. Getting in touch with my inner child.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So that might be surprising.
Is it the therapy that is it therapeutic?
It's just fun. It's just great. It's great to think about something that's not work.
Okay.
I love thinking about work, but it's good just to shut the brain off.
Sounds good. Well, folks, that's all we got for you. This is Boris, the old guy from www.oldguytalks.com. If you have not already opted in, do so now. Don't wait. Don't hesitate. Do not procrastinate. And I want to thank Tom Jenney from the Americans for Prosperity for coming and being my guest on the show tonight. Take care. And remember, it's all about creating a kick-ass life for yourself and those that you love.
Opt in and encourage other old guy assholes like you to opt in also.